Matthew chapter 1 starts off with one of the hardest passages. It's the genealogies. How many of you have read them? How many of you just kind of skipped through them?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people who had a whole bunch of sons, who had a whole bunch of people who had a whole bunch of sons. I got it.
No.
And
Bible quizzing.
Bible quizzing, you had to quote them.
Oh, yeah.
One of our good friends named his son's middle name after Jesus' grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me. And Jesus is, by the way, I'm not going to tell you who Jesus' grandfather is, but I'm going to tell you it's in here, okay? So if you want to look, you can see. And I'll give you a hint. It ends in the letter N. And that's all I'm going to tell you, okay?
Great grandpa David.
No, yeah, but that wasn't who
That
we're
doesn't
talking
end
about.
in an end.
But we're looking closer to the end.
Oh, good.
And we started doing it, last week we talked about what would you do if you were Mary's parents? What would you do if you were her family members? And she came home and told you of this story. She's engaged in a formal contract of marriage with a guy, and she comes home pregnant, and she says, I'm going to have a baby, but it's not from him and it's not from anybody. And the contract that you as her father and mother signed with the groom's parents was done in front of the whole town. See, we kind of try to put Mary in a special condition, but the truth is, Mary took 9 months to have a baby. Mary started showing. Mary couldn't hide it forever. I know they wore loose clothing back then, but you couldn't hide it. And what would you say as her parents? This week we're going to talk near the end of the chapter, and common tradition says Mary was between 13 and 16 years old. That's tradition. Joseph was older. We don't know how old. Now, some church traditions say, well, the truth is that Joseph had been married before, and Mary was a perpetual virgin, so the other children were half siblings. No, it says Jesus would be the firstborn. Okay, let's get that straight. Let's also recognize that in Luke it says that Jesus has 4 brothers and at least 2 sisters. Okay? But none of them are in the picture yet. So Joseph, his father has helped him enter into a formal contract in front of the entire town. And now Joseph is taking his time. He's putting the addition on the house. How many of you know that's not done in a day or a week, if it's done well? He's getting his business orders up. He's getting his job taken care of, because after he marries Mary for 1 year, he's not going to work. See, in that culture, the deal was you spent your first year just getting to know your wife, and your wife spent her first year just getting to know you. So you had to have some money saved up. You had some things saved up. You had to plan ahead, because for a year your business was on hold. Now, most sons followed in Dad's job, and you were in the same building, so Dad still helped out. And Dad would help cover. But you still had expenses. And Joseph has all these things, and he's building this house, he's building this addition onto his parents' house, and he's getting the business in order, and he hears through the grapevine that Mary's pregnant, not by him. How well would you take that news? See, most people would feel a lot of betrayal. Most people would snap the engagement off. And Joseph is thinking about it, because, see, it's more than just a standard engagement in our day. It's a legal contract. And there's a lot that has to be done. Because if he snaps the contract for infidelity, the penalty for breaking that contract with infidelity is death. Mary dies. Mary gets taken out into the public area. She gets put into a pit, and they stone her to death for infidelity. So he basically has life and death in his hands. And in Matthew chapter 1, verse 18, we read these words. This is how the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. But before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Now, because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law, I'm going to stop there. He was faithful to the law, comma, I'm going to stop. Faithful to the law meant that he knew and followed as best as his ability all 600 plus laws of Judaism. One of the early laws way back in Leviticus is if somebody's an infidelity, if a female is not faithful to her husband, she dies. And it was in common practice. See, the other thing that we think of, well, it didn't happen that often. Yeah, it did. Remember, a couple pages later, they brought a lady to Jesus who had committed adultery, and she was going to be killed. And they said, Jesus, what do you think? And he knew the law, and the law said she dies. And he bent down and started writing in the dirt. Now, it's interesting they brought the female, but not the male. Last time I looked, he was just as adulterous as her. But in this case, he knows the law, but he didn't want to expose her to public disgrace. She's young. They may say, okay, you're young, we won't kill you, but we know what kind of girl you are, so you're going to have to make a living on your own away from everybody. And they didn't have much opportunity for that. She couldn't get a job at Burger King or Wendy's or chambermaid. He didn't want to expose her to public disgrace, so he had in mind to divorce her quietly. See, that's what's going through Joseph's mind. Can you imagine what it must feel like? The girl that you love, that you've just pledged to live with forever, comes up pregnant and says, but it's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. But then there's a whole nother layer on top of this. What did Joseph's mother and father think? See, the Bible doesn't record that, but they're the ones who signed the contract. They're the ones who wrote the terms. And the father of the groom is the only one who can say, now's the time to go get your bride. See, that was a Galilean rule. In Galilee, the groom's dad was the one who said, okay, son, you've done everything you need to do. You're ready to get married. Go get her. The contract's set. Just waiting for you to take your bride. After he considered all his options, verse 20, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife. Don't be afraid to bring her in your house. Because what is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. Now I want you to think about that sentence for a minute. How many of you, if the Lord came to you and said, in a dream, a vision, or whatever, and said, don't be afraid to take this person, they're filled with the Holy Spirit. How many of you would do it? Without questioning? Not one hand went up? The Holy Spirit in you wouldn't let you know that it was true?
I'd be skeptical.
But I want you to go one step farther. Now let's back up. You have the Holy Spirit living in you as a Christian. How many of you know the Holy Spirit lives in you as a Christian? Okay, hands went up for that. I'm glad. I was worried that I hadn't taught very well. As a Christian, the Holy Spirit in you would recognize the Holy Spirit the angel's talking about today. But there's only one little glitch. This is pre-Pentecost. This is before the Holy Spirit spread himself out over groups of people at a time. This is when the Holy Spirit was specializing in prophets. Now I want you to think about that. in any given time, there was only a couple people in the community, in the whole country, who were filled with the Holy Spirit enough to be a prophet, like John the Baptist. And he was only a few months old. So what he's telling John, or what he's telling Joseph, is something that's really off the hook. She's filled with the Holy Spirit. I've only heard the prophets get the Holy Spirit. All the prophets I know are guys. Say, what? So right there's a disconnect. Because he didn't have that experience of the Holy Spirit living in him, verifying truth. Verse 21, she will give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. What is the tradition in a Jewish house? What did they get called?
Junior.
If they were the firstborn,
Junior.
they got called by the father's name. He's supposed to be a Joseph, not a Jesus. Okay, so now you're giving me this harder pill to swallow. Not only am I supposed to take her when the whole world's going to think that she's asleep around, but I'm supposed to take her, I'm supposed to trust the Holy Spirit that I don't even know anybody who has it. And then I'm supposed to call him by somebody else's name. By the way, remember at the beginning I said he had other children? He had at least 4 sons. One of them was named Joseph. Okay? She will give birth to a son. You're to give him the name Jesus because he will save his people from their sins. Jesus comes from the same root word as Joshua. Who was Joshua? He wasn't Moses, but it was Joshua who actually took them into the promised land.
Yeah.
Moses took them up to the edge. Joshua took them in and gave them the victories. He saved the people who had been Israelite slaves and gave them an inheritance that they had been promised by Abraham.
Yes.
He's the one who fulfilled the promise. Jesus is the one who fulfills the promise. After all this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they'll call him Emmanuel. God with us. God enjoined with us. God among our midst. Wow. This has never happened before. This is unbelievable. And Joseph is sitting here going, it sounds good if it's true, but do I really want to have part of this? How many of you, when God gives you a ministry opportunity, be honest, gives you a ministry opportunity, some of you are a little bit going, well, okay, if it's really you, Lord, that's cool, but could you send me an angel? Could you make it in a cloud in the sky? You know, nice little letters.
Write it on the wall.
You know, could you confirm it to me just a little better? See, we've idolized these biblical heroes and think that they're not human. They're human. They're struggling. We struggle. If we're honest with ourselves, we struggle. I struggled with ministry. I ducked it for 25 years. Wow. Yes, that tells you how old I am because I'm 62 and I ducked it for 25 and I've been in the business for 25. I was called at about 12 and I hid from it. Other better people. There's this, there's that. When Joseph woke up, now there's another one where a lot of people would say, well, there you go. Just a dream. It's cool. In fact, I can remember when I accepted the call to my ministry, I was laying on the couch at 710 Indian Avenue in North Cape May, 2 blocks away from the ferry. It was a Monday night. Lisa was out with picking up the kids from dance class. And I was laying on the couch watching TV. I think it was MASH. Don't hold me to that. I used to love MASH. I used to watch it over and over and over again. And I got a phone call from a pastor I had never met and a church I had never been to.
We had been discussing it.
We had talked about doing something, but I was a
Something.
school teacher. I was saying, hey, I'll be a summer
Do it in the
evangelist. I'll
summer.
take care of kids' camps in the summer. Cool.
Cool.
And this church I had never been to this day, and a pastor I had never met to this day, called me and said, I heard you're going to be a youth pastor. I'd like to hire you. I literally fell off the couch. What? And this was in the day before cell phones. This was on a corded phone. And I was very wrapped up in the cord. I won't lie.
You didn't read it on Facebook.
No, there was no verification. But I have to tell you, I went, well, I haven't even looked into studies yet. I'll get back to you. Now, the reason I didn't was because I'm Nazarene. And this was from a different denomination, that I don't agree with all of their politics. I'll say it that way. Is that not okay? Not a spiritual thing, a political thing. But the next day I started looking into how to become a minister.
And didn't walk real close to the shore.
And I didn't walk by the beach because I really didn't want that whale to grab me. I'm not gonna lie. At that point we lived 6 blocks from the beach, and I used to walk it all the time. I'm like, no. But number one, Joseph had to make a decision. He had to walk by faith. Because he didn't see the Holy Spirit impregnate Mary. He wasn't there. He's hearing something that is totally outrageous for what has ever happened before in all of recorded history. And he has options, and he said, okay, I will. But I want you to go one step farther. When he woke up, he was a man of God. He was a man who followed the Jewish law to the best of his ability. When he woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him. He took Mary home as his wife, but he didn't consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son and had named him Jesus. I also want you to see one more thing here. He circumvented culture. Huh? How do you do that, Pastor? He went against his own culture by taking Mary home before Dad said it was okay. He broke the rules. He said, my trust in God oversees my trust in man. Now, how many of you, now, I love my dad. My dad has passed away. My dad and I had every relationship that a father-son can have, or real close to it. Because I love my dad, if he had said, by the way, he didn't say anything about Lisa. He liked Lisa, okay? Just so we know that. She worked for him, okay? Not physically, but they were on the same page. But what happened was, if Dad had said, I don't think you should marry her, I would have taken it seriously. Because Dad had good sense. And Dad was a Christian, and Dad listened to the Holy Spirit. And I would have had to scratch my head a little bit and go, okay. But Dad never gave his approval here. And Joseph said, okay, I'm moving her into the house anyway.
Well, his love for Mary also had to play a part, I would think.
Many, and not really, many of these marriages were arranged.
Yeah, that's true too.
That's why the year after they got married, they didn't work, because they were getting to know who they were. See, it's totally different in our culture, and we don't understand it that way. But God had a plan. God's plan would not be denied. Now, the Bible does not say anything about how Mary's parents reacted or Joseph's parents reacted. And that's probably okay. But I want you to see all the community issues with this situation. And Jesus says, you think you got issues? See, if I ask you, and I'm going to, how many of you have issues that concern you? And if you don't put your hands up or nod your head, you're lying. So come to the altar and pray. It's that simple. Everyone in this room and everyone online has issues and situations that concern them. Now, we're not all the same. But look what God overcame in just this little bit of time. Unwed mother becomes pregnant by unusual means, non-medical unusual means, non-understood means. The intended gets ready to divorce her quietly because he does care for her enough that he doesn't want to kill her. Into a community that all knows what's going on and is saying, we were all there for the contract. What's the story? And we look at it and we say, well, we showed faith. We actually went to church on Wednesday night. Think about that for a minute. Oh yeah, I stepped out in faith. I went to the Wednesday night Bible study. At the grocery store, somebody sneezed and I said, God bless you. I actually told my best friend, you know, you're going through a hard time, you ought to pray. See, we think those are the big issues in our life. And you had Mary and Joseph, 13-year-old girl, bit older guy, we don't know how old he was. But we know